I would like to, if I could get everybody's attention, ask for a moment of silence. We just lost a former member of Congress, Katie Hall, from Gary, Indiana. And after that, Mr. Speaker, if you would be kind, we'd like to have a moment or two to make some comments about Ms. Hall. So I request that the House have a moment of silence in remembrance of Katie Hall.
The House will be in order. The House will be in order. The gentleman from Indiana is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me just start off real quickly before I yield to my colleague from Gary, Indiana, and say that Katie Hall, who was a member of this body, died just this last few days from an unknown illness. She was 73 years old. She came from very humble beginnings in Mound Bayo, Mississippi. She grew up on her grandfather's cotton farm, and she was a teacher for more than 30 years.
The House will be in order. Members, please take your conversations off the floor. The gentleman may proceed.
Thank you very much. She was a very fine teacher, and she moved in 1962 to Gary, Indiana, where she became a very good friend of Richard Hatcher, the mayor. And when a good friend of mine, Adam Benjamin, who was once a member of this body, died, Mr. Hatcher, Mayor Hatcher, appointed her as the nominee on the Democrat Party, from the Democrat Party, to succeed him. She also served in the Indiana Senate. I served with her there. She was a very fine person.
The gentleman is correct. The House will be in order. Take your conversations off the floor. The gentleman from Indiana may proceed.
And during her time in the Congress, she sponsored, along with others, but she was one of the key sponsors in 1983 of a national holiday in remembrance of Dr. Martin Luther King. And she was credited with for playing a very key role in getting that bill passed after it had stalled in the House for over 14 years. Let me just say that she was a great lady, a great Congresswoman, and she'll be missed, and we want to send our deepest sympathy to her family and her friends. And with that, I'll be happy to yield to my colleague, the senior member. Let me start with the senior member from Gary, Indiana.
I appreciate the gentleman for yielding, and I appreciate the indulgence of the chair. I appreciate the gentleman yielding and asking for the moment of silence.
Mr. Speaker, could we ask the folks over there to be silent for just a few minutes?
The House will be in order. The House will be in order. Members, please take your conversations off the floor. The gentleman from Indiana may proceed.
I appreciate it. Again, I would express my appreciation for the Dean of our delegation, Mr. Burton, for asking for the moment of silence and the Speaker's indulgence. Mr. Burton rightfully pointed out Mrs. Hall's ascendancy into the Congress and her sponsorship of the legislation that led to Dr. King's birthday being declared a national holiday. Would also point out to my colleagues that Mrs. Hall also served in the Indiana House as well as the Indiana Senate, and following her service in the United States Congress also served as clerk for the city of Gary for 5 years from 1988 to 2003. She does leave a granddaughter, 2 daughters, and a husband. My sympathies and all of ours go out to the family as well. I also think that Mrs. Hall probably would want to be most remembered for her role as an educator and those who taught young people in the Gary school system. She certainly always served her family. She always served those she taught and represented, and she certainly served her country. And again, our sympathies go to the family, and I deeply appreciate the respect shown by the gentleman from Indiana.
I thank the gentleman for his remarks, and I'd be very happy to yield to my colleague from Indianapolis.
Thank you, colleague. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to take a moment and join my colleagues to honor the life of former Congresswoman Katie Hall, who passed last week at the age of 73. I met her as a young man. In fact, I had the chance to spend some time with her in the early 80s in San Francisco during the Democratic National Convention. But she quickly made a name for herself, to my colleague's point, not only as a strong advocate and leader in the state of Indiana, but as an educator. She knew that America's children were suffering, and she supported alternative education, Mr. Speaker. She understood that children had different needs, and she made sure that she was an advocate of different educational models to meet those needs. So, with my deepest sympathies go out to her family and friends who are mourning her passing, and we know that Indiana politics will not be the same. I yield back. Thank you, colleague, for acknowledging.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and she will be missed. And once again, our sympathy goes out to her and to her family and all of her loved ones.